Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episodes with Pacific Crime Business Council, and already Dr. Goyabadi and everyone trying to contribute with World Talent Economy Forums. And I get a call from different corporations, different government bodies, universities. They are really impressed with how they're giving the solution for the local community, and especially sustainability issues, corporate resilience, and the COVID period, how business organizations should play their role. This is very important for Asia Pacific. So today we're going to discuss more. We will learn more. We will understand more. I want to start with Dr. Ali Goabadi, because you and your team actually fantastics. Especially our audience really love your teams and how you're contributing for the different complex things. This is very important for us. So yes, Dr. Ali Goabadi.
All right, thank you so much. And I guess our university, California Miramar University, also collaborates with Pacific Rim Business Council because we believe in what Pacific Rim Business Council is trying to do. So I guess Sharif forgot to mention that. Anyways, I guess today we're discussing resilient workforce or resilient organizations. Now, see, these words such as resilience, perseverance have been used quite often. People have gone through trauma, people have gone through psychological breakdown, people have dealt before with issues related to losing business, going bankrupt, coming out of any form of addiction. So issue of resilience has been around, especially in psychology, for a long time. And if you go even to the ancient times, you hear our mystics and our philosophers always discussing that how one should be resilient given the fact that nature is resilient. You see, after a storm, nature builds itself. After a disease, after an infectious disease, you see body has the ability to rebuild itself and it's resilient. Now, that's for sure the case. So nothing's new here. What's new today and what's new to the so-called human resource development and cultural development and organizational development is how do you make an entity resilient given the fact that we are facing one of the worst economic disasters of our time. Now, we had the 2008, 2009 crash, and that was something that we felt its ripples for years throughout the different markets. But today, when you look at what happened to COVID-19 and the aftermath, and actually still we're in the middle of it, I think we still haven't seen the worst of it. I think within the next few months, you're going to see a fair amount of backlash still continuing from COVID-19, and we see the third wave or even maybe the first wave that we've never been able to manage. Now, the question at hand today is, how do you make your organization, your workforce resilient in the face of this challenge? The number of death will rise, but the number of death in this particular pandemic is nothing compared to the damage it will cause to a lot of businesses. I'm talking about businesses that were doing just fine before the pandemic hit, and now today we see they either have gone under or they will go under. That aftermath is going to be so much more severe than actually the toll, which even one life is very important and very great, but the amount of livelihood lost within this pandemic. This is the concept and the issue we're trying to deal with. Now, I'm not going to take too much time because I would like the roundtable to be actually a roundtable and not a monologue. And as such, we're looking at ways that one can turn their organization. I don't care if it's a mom and pop shop, if it's a very micro level business, or a small 50 people getting together, or even 500. How do we change our organization into a resilient organization? As you've seen, some people have no symptoms whatsoever when it comes to COVID-19, and some people die, simply speaking, because of the so-called underlying conditions. So if we do a SWOT analysis of organizations, you see some organizations, because of the fact that they were ill prepared, the fact that they were sick to begin with, they had certain underlying conditions, will definitely die. And the question, can we find some sort of a remedy even for those organizations that should die? And as you can see, we're doing that in the hospitals. The death rate is much lower by remdesivir and other medicine. So is there a way for us, even for companies that supposedly should die, given the condition, are there remedies that if we adhere to, we could even save those companies? Micro, small, or medium. Now, we're going to be discussing different means and different ways of making our organization, our business more resilient. That is, I think, the focus of today's talk, and hopefully, we'll be able to interact with one another in a constructive manner so we can at least share with you what we have found to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I just want to add few things, then you can understand your university and your thoughts, how it's create impact to our audience. So, Humaira Tanzila, hello, sir. We are glad to see you all. Hope it is another informative session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mohammad Sohel Rana, hello, sir. Thanks for joining today's discussion. We are eagerly waiting for business solutions. So basically from Asia Pacific, our audience, different kind of audience, they really like your discussions and they're waiting. When even fact is that I getting call from different universities, even from different policymaker institution. They call me when they come. They want to know more. What will happen? So hopefully your university will be the great branding for Asia Pacific. So Mr. Mu, what do you want to share about this point and corporate resilience, and how do you want to share?
You're muted, I think, Mo.
I'm sorry about that. Resilience means different things under different contexts. And when you talk about personal resilience, if a person's mental health is good enough to deal with any changes thrown at him or her, that's one thing. And when you talk about corporate resilience, you are really talking. It still means if the organization can deal with the changes thrown at it, but it's a different mechanic, but those two are actually connected, and there are recent research done proving that there's a strong correlation between the person who work for the organization and the resilience of the person who work for the organization and the resilience of the organization itself. And this is done multicultural on a global level, and each, at least what we know is in the US, in the German-speaking countries, in China, in most of the Europe, we see correlations. So that means that one of the best way to fix your organization, to increase the resilience of your organization, I'm not saying this is the only way, but one of the most efficient way is to increase the people who work for the organization. Right. So that actually makes sense if you look at just commonsensically. Right? If crazy people work for your business, of course our business is going to be crazy. And you got sane people, you got mentally resilient people work for your organization who doesn't go crazy easily, then your business won't go crazy, even if there's a huge change come and hit you. And that's just what I want to put there to get the conversation started. There are a couple points we can talk about to how do we increase personal within the organization's resilience. But for now, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Dr. Stan Foster. Yes. What do you want to add to this?
Well, again, I think there's a balance always in corporations, whether you're talking and the workforce that make up those organizations, and there's one at the heart of it is health and well-being. A lot of studies have come out on this. I have a wonderful website that deals with this, and the article is it's called 15 5, and it's the number www.15five.com. And they have an article there called Building a Resilient Workforce, and wonderful graphs and studies that have come out on that. But during the pandemic, one of the key factors was now suddenly people were there. One of the biggest factors came about with patients. A lot of times we were caught up in the busy world, and we tended to be rushing from one assignment to the next, and we barely stopped to take a breath. Suddenly the pandemic hits, and people are forced to work from home and spread apart, and more importantly, incredibly slow down. And if they didn't have patience, and if the management doesn't have patience, then that can throw everything into an upside down type of a environment. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing here right now. We're not used to this, and it's creating a lot of angst amongst both the companies and the employees. So one of the key things for high performing companies was to now, with all of their people working from home, before they could go in, they felt they had a better finger on the pulse, if you will, of what was going on at the workplace. And suddenly now they weren't able to see people working from home. They had to develop a little bit higher level of trust. And that is not necessarily wasn't part of their corporate environment in that way, because if they couldn't see it, how do they trust? And so they had to develop some new metrics on how they could evaluate and trust those employees. So again, all of these things have come through and created a little bit of a dynamic environment that we're just now, as we're into about the 6th, 7th month of this pandemic, just now starting to realize, and we still don't have all the answers. But again, that one website that I sent to you in that article is phenomenal. So please take some time and look at it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Mr. Eric, what do you want to add today?
Well, so one thing to keep in mind is resilience is big brother, which is sustainability. One thing you want to make sure is the work you're doing is the work that, in fact, is resilient in itself. I'll give you an example. My sister worked for Tower Records, and their business was selling records. And as technology came, they tried to figure out new and innovative ways to sell records. They went out of business basically trying to put their record store online. The challenge wasn't that people were not, the people buying records dwindled to experts and specific people, but the music business went crazy. So if you were in the music business, you were a music selection, finding, distribution business. And by the way, what Tower Records was really good is finding exactly the music you want. You walk in there and you'd find somebody who could tell you about every musician, the differences in recordings. They were great at that. If they were able to capture that and put it online, I think they probably still would have been in business today. So after the business is resilient, then it's important to look at your workforce, because your workforce needs to be able to handle these changes that come in. And then after that, it's looking at your supply, your operations chain, your supply chain, your operations. And so the key to keep in mind is a holistic approach, but probably in the short term on the resilient side, workforce is probably one of the key factors that's going. And someone asked the question of, can developing countries recover? And the answer is yes. but you got to get your business right. So as soon as you pick a sustainable business, like Singapore had a very difficult challenge, no resources, no support. They picked a sustainable business model, and then they worked to create resilience in that business model. Well, that's not unique to Singapore, but it's a good example because Singapore didn't have any resources they could call on to say, we'll sell this, we'll do that. We have manufacturing and businesses. So I think that's the lead thing to start is, did you pick a sustainable business?
Yes, thank you, thank you. Uh, I directly want to go to for the audience questions because they have a lot of questions, especially Dr. Ali Goyabadi with his team when he joins. He has actually a lot of students in Asia Pacific. I do not know. Anyway, Mr. Shahrukh, his question is that, hello sir, how would be the reconstruction of our economy is future is possible like developing countries?
I mean, I think yes. That the answer is yes, and I like the word reconstruction. To be honest, I think even though I cannot prove it at this time because we are academicians, and as such, we need to have at least some sort of a reasonable backup for our claims. But I believe the developing economies will be more resilient than will be the Western economies for two reasons. They were resilient to begin with, given the conditions. And when we're looking at the developing economies, we go back to a particular study that was done by Hofstadter a long time ago for IBM, but it looked at how people behave, meaning the cultural trait within a business. So in reality, people who own businesses, the entrepreneurs, have the ability to permeate their business and help success bring success to their businesses through the so-called their mindset and their cultural attributes, especially when we're talking about Far East. Far Eastern culture is very resilient to begin with. As a matter of fact, maybe that's why we have even lost less people to COVID in Far East than anywhere else. That's issue one. The way to go is to go back to certain value systems that we can share with our employees and our partners. In reality, today we are facing a harsh fact that we need social distancing. Somebody else asked about how do you open businesses given the social distancing. Now, there are solutions in there. Solution one, if one can understand, given the culture of a particular area, how home shoring, meaning you take the work to home, how home shoring can really produce good results, and how bringing employees into the organization, not as employees who are hired and they're just machinery, but as partners whose livelihood depends on the success of the business. And in a way, making sure they realize they are partners, they realize they are in this together. So if we can bring and build upon the culture that already exists in a developing nations, especially as I said, Far East, to bring the consideration of a family-run business, even though the employees are not necessarily blood relatives, but considering and maybe even rethinking a way of bringing them into the business as either shareholders or potential shareholders or share effect holders in such a way that they realize that this business is theirs, and understanding that there is no more my job, your job, but our job. Actually, our business, the survival of our business, there are ways that people are looking at how businesses need to do a self-assessment, not just of their uh, strategies and their business plan, but of their personalities when it comes to each individual who works in there, and understanding that it really is the mixture and the dynamic of people working together within a small business that makes that business either successful or a failure. And opening to new possibilities and stop postponing the assimilation of new technologies such as um, home shoring, the ability for remote work, the ability for automation, and allowing especially the younger generation to redefine themselves openly within an environment, and yet looking at the bottom line and the top line, but understanding that they have to have the resilience to be able to contract and adapt accordingly to the conditions that are changing day by day. My feeling is post COVID 19, developing nations will prosper more, even though maybe that's not a proper usage of the word prosperity, is not the correct word. However, because of the fact that their conditions were harsh, you will notice that their resilience will be higher given the situation caused by COVID 19 and its aftermath, especially the economic aftermath.
Thank you, Professor. Mr. Mu, what do you want to add about this developing countries' economy reconstruction?
Uh, I guess I'm kind of torn between whether to talk about small business and talk about general economic policies. Well, I guess I'll start with the latter and maybe finish on the smaller. Right? Overall, how the economy is going to work, and then I'll see what can be done by small business to actually contribute to that. So by definition, developing nations needs to be developed, right? That's the name implies. So what makes a country develop or developing? So the infrastructure within your country matters. Right? So you can see a lot of rich country, right? that they are still developing country, but you have a lot of country that are not so good on cash right now, but they're still a developed country. Why? Because they have infrastructure. They know they can, once the time is right, they can still move within the country. Why is China so resilient? Because they put all the money they make into their own infrastructure, and United States that. But that's a separate issue. It's one of their strategy, but not necessarily how they become so well developed and so resilient. Right? So when you in this world, when you put all your money that your hard earned money into a financial security, and when the finance market, yes, in short term, in good times, it makes a lot of return, and maybe finance expert will tell you that's a better idea to invest our money into something that actually has a calculatable return. Right? That's basically the job of a finance engineer. But in reality, when you invest in a stock that's not even in your country, when you invest in security that's just on paper yours, in reality, when something like COVID hits, it's all just gonna gone, right? So you won't have access to it anymore. And when if you look into South America, even when you put your money in a so-called reputable bank, they can still deny your access if there's some political movement within your country, and that's not even within the confine of COVID. So that goes back to what makes a country resilient, what makes an economy resilient. I think, in my opinion, at least, China has proved that you have to build infrastructures. So this goes back to the couple talks ago. We were kind of arguing what is more important, making money or building infrastructure. Right? So money, I still stand on my point. Money is not important as long as you can figure out how to spend your money. What you use your money for is more important than money itself. Money is it's more than just a number in your bank account. So that kind of is a nice little segue going into small business. So what kind of small business to do? Because small business cannot just go out there and build roads, right? And then they cannot just go out there and develop their own navy and protect their shipping routes. No, that's not what small business can do. So it's kind of separate from what a country should do or what the economy should do to make themselves more resilient. On the small company side, there are still stuff you can do to make your little companies resilient. That is reinvest into your own people, and make sure your people are aligned with your goal as a business owner, right? So be sure to not just pay them fairly, because as long as you are thinking of paying them as you are the giver, they're the receiver, the dynamic has changed. That becomes a slave and master work relation. And that's a technical term. That doesn't mean they're really slaves. That just means this kind of relationship is not sustainable, because it's technically sustainable because masters want slaves to keep being slaves. But there's another kind of somebody work for someone else relationship or dynamic. That's the mentor and apprentice relationship. So when a mentor asks the apprentice to work on something, he's trying to groom the apprentice. And he's trying to make the apprentice grow. And by definition, this kind of relationship is not long-term sustainable, because a good relationship between a mentor and a apprentice is gonna end itself, because the distance between the two are sustainably shrinking. So the end goal here is to make the apprentice a master, or make the apprentice a mentor, the same as a mentor at least. So that kind of, even though that relationship won't last, but at the end of the day, when you have all your people in your organization qualified to be a mentor, that's when your organization is really gonna do some damage here. And by damage, I don't mean the damage. I mean, it kind of really matters here. So imagine an opportunity where everybody is both at the same time working for themselves and without any conflict working for their organization. They get together not because they want to make money, but because they want to do something otherwise they could not do individually. And so that's the core of why organization exists. And that touches on the famous stakeholder theory, but I'm not going there. So coming back to our topic, so how small business to make their economy more resilient, or how rebuild their economy, is first of all, small business to make themselves resilient, right? And how they achieve that is to make sure you treat your people right. And by treating our people right is, how do you treat your people right? First of all, you need to readjust your approach to what is the dynamic between you and your workers. And the answer to that is treat them as if they are either partners, if they are already at the mentor level, or apprentice. Your goal is to grow them into the same status as you are, the same capabilities of you are, not to exploit them. So that's the difference, and that's the way of thinking we need to adjust to make more resilient small businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Mu. For Mr. Eric and Dr. Stan Foster's, I have a specific question, because I think this question is almost same, so you can respond. Do you think that developing countries can bounce back to their economy? What is your advice for them? Thanks, Mr. Mahdi. So, Dr. Stan Foster.
Well, first of all, yes, I do believe that they can bounce back. And I think one of the important features of this is what we talked about in previous shows, actually, too. And the economy, what makes a strong company? What makes a company resilient? I've got five items here, and I'll just read them, and then and it will go to the heart of what the point I'm going to be trying to make. Number one is an operating model. Does distributed authority with central coordination. Two is capability, the deep levels of training and experience. And again, we found that training, some of the most important aspects of being an employee in companies is that they get the opportunity to be trained and that the opportunity to learn. And that's one of their most important aspects of being in a company. The other thing, and then this is true whether it's on the corporate side or on the employee side, is relationships and having good communication. Now, a lot of times companies have communication, and some communications need to be very infrequent, maybe once a month, once a week, and some communications need to be more frequent. And in times of stress, in times of uncertainty, and a shifting working environment, that communication and the frequency of that working communication becomes much more important. So that frequency needs to increase. And it may be daily. It may be more than once daily, especially if the workforce is not in-house or part of it in-house. Having good communications becomes even more paramount and important. The leadership and how the leadership treats the employees. One of the big things that Dr. Guyabadi has said, and so has Mu, is, if you, especially in small and medium-sized businesses, if you create a family type environment where you trust, there's good communication. Again, that communication and those relationships come back into play here. And when you do have certain hardships, what do families do? They don't kick one of the kids out of the house and just say, hey, good luck, come back, maybe move to another country and start over there and keep in touch with grandma and grandpa. No, they pull together. So a lot of strategies for corporate are very similar. One of them is to be careful about layoffs. It might be better to have everybody go part-time, or maybe perhaps that everybody takes a ubiquitous cutback. Now, in the United States, they had a big recession in 2008, and Southwest Airlines practiced this exact strategy. They didn't lay off people, because what happens when you lay people off, right? At some point, you are going to rebound. And when you do rebound, you have to go through the retraining and reassimilation process all over again. And also, it's without doubt that those people that got cut and got laid off are going to have some resentment. They're going to feel like that they were left and cut loose. So again, I think that's maybe one of the most profound strategies that we might need to look at during this pandemic, and as we turn the corner and then start to rebound.
Thank you. Mr. Eric.
So when you talk about recovery of a company, one way to look at it is recovery of the company, of the country itself. Another way to look at it is about the recovery of the companies within the country. And although they work together, they're different. So either way, one of the most powerful tools is a well-executed strategy with a plan that's measurable attached to that. And when it comes to a country, getting a well-executed strategy is certainly possible and tough. I mean, if you look what Greece did, it was very austere. So to get everybody on board that, you're going to have to work together, you're going to have to change, you're going to have to take action, it can be fairly tough. So when it comes to businesses, if you look at the top businesses in the world, the thing they have in common is a well-executed strategy, but most businesses don't have a strategy, certainly not a resilient one and a sustainable one. And those that do have a great strategy, you find that most of them haven't executed it. So that is the toughest part in either way, getting a well-executed strategy. Now, developing companies can be more agile than developed companies who have all these locked processes in place. And small companies can be more agile. But let me give you some examples. And this is no way encompasses the complexity and the devastation that's felt in many places. But it's a simple story and it's close by. So I'll use that just to get a concept. And if you're in San Diego and you just cross the border, which you can do in minutes, to Mexico, beautiful country, you cross the border and things immediately change. You say, why do things change? I mean, it's the same land basically. And the biggest thing that changes is infrastructure. if you want to get a loan without a collateral, if you want to do a lot of the things that would be very common in San Diego, is tough to do just a few miles because you crossed a line. But what's happened in Tijuana, they worked together to bring in high-speed internet, that kind of framework. And then they started coming up with resilient and sustainable ideas for little companies to go make business all over the world. The next thing they did was look for ways to compensate for the infrastructure that doesn't list. And that includes money, hiring, culture. And so in some cases, they built their own. Some cases, they band together and built their own infrastructures. Some cases, they partnered, sometimes right across the border. There's a lot of very cross-border where the infrastructure existed 10, 20, 30 miles away. They would borrow that by partnering with somebody else. But probably one of the biggest things they did was create cultures that fit in with the markets that they wanted to do business in, that had the money, that were developed. So if you go, and by the way, I've visited a lot of the companies and worked with them a lot as part of the kind of thing that we do with the PRBC. And you couldn't tell that they were different than developing companies' operations in terms of the way they think, the way they plan, the way they do, yet they have an advantage of lower costs and that flexibility from being a more agile organization. So they actually were able to create and import their own infrastructure and resources, even having to overcome some really powerful conditions. And the conditions between, the United States and Mexico aren't the kind of conditions we're talking in many other parts of the world, which are still trying to develop these infrastructures that move. I think hit the nail on the head with that's the toughest thing to develop, especially with in some case, new technology can hurt if you don't get it or able to implement. But on the other hand, it can help you. And there's a lot going on with things like finance right now that can really help things like that. So the answer to the question is, can you recover? Sure. Well executed strategy is key. And that strategy should include the infrastructure, which includes both technology and resources. And as Dr. Foster brought out, people are probably the most critical part of these resources here. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. I want to directly go to Dr. Ali Goabadis, and this question's for you, Hosnara Firdos. She asked you a question. Hello, sir. It's a nice discussion about business economy. How can we balance between social distancing and reopening economy?
Okay, to answer this question and also to agree with Noor Fajrin, I mean, it all goes back to the basics. I mean, for some reason, we've been copying what other people are doing. I mean, we always sort of, in the developing nation, have been looking at what the books from Harvard or the practices from Microsoft telling us, and we sort of try to mimic it. No longer that is possible. In reality, we are facing a new normal. The old normal is gone, and a new normal is now here to stay. I know it's hard. I deal with different people, depending on their age, depending on their background, depending on their ability to understand and comprehend. Their level of resistance really differs. However, McKinsey sort of discussed these 5 different skill sets, as Noor was trying to look at what kind of skills, 5 different skill sets and 5 different things managers and owners and business leaders need to do in order to be able to redefine this new normal. I mean, obviously you have to resolve. There is a problem we have to resolve. look into resilience, and then also look at the return and reimagine and definitely reform. No longer we can go back to what we were doing before. And depending on a sector, depending on a business, depending on a country, this normal will be different. It's not going to be identical. I don't think, at least for the next 10 to 15 years, we will not be going back to what was normal before COVID-19. So we need, first of all, to recover as much as the revenue as we can, and we need to rebuild operations, maybe looking at different forms of uh, rebuilding. Again, paying attention to what Eric and Mo was saying, and as well as what Dr. Foster was mentioning, and to go into the ability to rethink the organization, especially understand what kind of culture is required and what kind of culture we have. And then obviously you have to always look into the new solutions that are possible. That means the digital solutions. Now, when you're trying to go back in trying to figure out a way to quickly recover the revenue, the lost revenue, there is this shape, SHAPE. You have to shape up. Shape means the S stands for startup mindset. I don't care how long you've been in business, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. You have to go back into the mindset of a startup. Everything is new. We need to get involved on a regular basis. Maybe, have this weekly 30-minute CEO review, go get the people. I mean, how would a startup work? Everyone gets together. Guess what? We are at that. So that's for the S for startup. H for human at the core. We need to put not just human back to be the central issue, but also to put humanity and human incentives and human psychology back into human resources. As a matter of fact, I think it's time not to call human resources anymore. Maybe human capital. Putting human back at the core is another issue. And that's very important. We need to pay attention to human not as a means to an end, which is making money, but to an end in itself, making sure that human beings are there. And then, as I said, that was SH. Now, the A stands to accelerate that digital technology analytics. No longer we can just go by the seat of our pants or through heuristics, feeling that what we want to do. We need to understand these digital channels. They have become almost ubiquitous, as Dr. Foster was saying, and inexpensive, sometimes even free. So understanding how to connect to our employees, how to connect to our so-called customers, to our partners, to our suppliers, how to manage our supply relationship management. All of that have to be rethought, and you have to really look at it. Now, that's the SHA, right? Going into the acceleration of assimilating the digital technology. And then the P, you have to have purpose-driven customer playbook. We need to understand, we need to allow the voice of customers to run. We need to have a purpose. We cannot just be there because we're there. Like, for example, in our university, we turned the whole organization around on its head. Today, the president of the university serves the C-level. The C-level are serving the staff. The staff are serving the student support and faculty support. And faculty are really treated as customers to us. They're the boss, and their boss, students. So we've looked at purpose-driven customer and multi-layer customers, and obviously ecosystem and adaptability. That's the E. That's how you shape up. In reality, we need to go back and say, how do I make money again? How do I survive again? You cannot say how I used to survive. Guess what, buddy? Because Dr. Stoner is there. He always likes this word buddy. So guess what, buddy? You ain't gonna be around for much longer if you're gonna think like past. You need to think like the future. And the future is you have to identify and prioritize revenue opportunities. You might have to be looking, you have to go back to the drawing board. That's why you have to have that startup mentality. And really, by the way, something happened. I tell you, two things happened no one thought about. COVID brought us two new possibilities. We can work much harder. Even though people are working from home, they're working much harder, much more efficient. I mean, work performance has gone up, number one. And two, we can work much cheaper. Now, people are not going to let go of this, in fact. Already has been shown that people were not working as hard as they could have. People are not as efficient, and guess what? They are. So this is very important. So in reality, what has happened? We have developed an agile model, an operation model that is very agile, and it's really working. So people need to be thinking about rebuilding their operations, right? And building resilience into that operation. I mean, as Eric was saying, the big brother, that sustainability is the end result of all of these things happening. And in reality, if we can, we have to accelerate this end-to-end value chain digitization. So you don't have a person sitting in the middle. You have everything done automatically and you really looking right now, a lot of capital is sitting there and it's not being used. Why? Because it's not like before. So maybe we have to go and increase this capital and operating expense transparency. People need to know. As a matter of fact, we can even go one step further and show our customers, all stakeholders, that's what transparency is for. So people are not anxious when it comes to investing into your organization. And future of the work is future of the work. If you like it or not, work has changed. People don't like it, either they have to shape up or I guess ship out. So that's why you have to be able to reimagine an operation that is sustainable and gives you a competitive advantage. Without that competitive advantage, and there are certain things we talk about. Right now, we're talking the talk. We might be in a meeting talking the walk. Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But in reality, at the end of the day, these will not take place unless we take actions. There is no way for you to walk the talk unless if you walk the walk. And that's why we need to start rethinking how we do, who we are, all those basic questions that we thought we knew or we never really had a chance. That's why education, educate yourself. I'm not saying come to our university and let us educate you. No. Education is out there. You need to understand what is growth and how to grow. One has to be able to understand different aspects of this business. I don't want to turn this into a classroom, but there are many facets to this particular undertaking. But glad tidings, we've learned so much from this pandemic. We've learned so much and we've gone better for it. To be honest, I think each time, there's a saying, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Now, yes, it has killed few, million, but in all honesty, COVID-19 has brought us to a stage that it would not have been possible, at least not for a decade. We are at the crossroad to a new way of managing, in a new way of working that was not possible unless something like this pandemic would have taken place. And last but not least, our economic system has to change. Capitalism does not work. I don't care how much capitalists would like to say it works, it's doomed to fail and it's gonna fail. Let's start at the micro level and let's not act like a capitalist. Let's act like a human being that is resilient and in a fashion that is very sustainable.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ali. We have Pacific Crime Business Council Honorable Chairman, Mr. Homestoner. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm on my
Oh,
morning walk, and you'll
okay,
have to
okay,
excuse
excellent.
me because early in the mornings I have to take a long walk. It's
Okay,
just part
understand.
of being an old person.
Yeah, to
Okay,
stay
excellent.
resilient, to stay resilient.
Okay, excellent. Yes, yes, Mr. Homestoner, what do you want to share about your point of views, especially in the COVID periods, and about this Asia Pacifics, and what about the US election? What do you want to share?
Well, I'm pleased. I'm
Okay.
pleased that now that there'll be a uniform uh, approach to the pandemic instead of this haphazard take it or leave it attitude. I'm very pleased about that. And as Dr. Ali so appropriately put it, we are shaping the new normal here. And we need all of you, all of the people, especially the Pacific Rim, where 5/8 of the world's trade happens every day. We need to be organized. We have to have an agenda and we have to execute. It's as simple as that. We need the young people to step up, come up with creative ideas, and then execute.
Mhm. Yes, yeah, this is really really good things that we have to execute. So, Mr. Mo, what do you want to add about this skill developments and the social distancing and reopening economic policy?
Uh, well, if like Dr. Grabali said, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. So if you are in a position to ask that question, I guess congratulations, you survived. Um, but how do we balance social distancing, right? So it's not a matter of balancing. It's just a new fact. It's consider that a factor. It's an unmovable object. So how do you deal with an unmovable object? You go around it. And so if you already survived so far, it's been a year. For Southeast Asia countries, it's more than a year now. So if you have already put it off, I guess you're doing something right. So keep doing that. That's a very general idea. But to get into the nitty gritty, what can you do to make sure you are more resilient? And I guess Dr. Guabadi can't cover it all with the shape. Not gonna repeat him. But one of the things I do want to stress on is the digitization. The COVID is not just when we do digitization during COVID is not just a thing we did to remedy COVID. Yes, it is. It has remedied COVID, but I guess by doing that right now, we have proved that we can work remotely. There are a lot of jobs you can actually have people work remotely, and they will save you money. But money saved, that's not save money for the owner. Well, you can save it for the owner, but saving money by itself can mean an improvement of your efficiency. And if the new way is a more efficient way, even though it's only given birth during COVID, and that's the only place it can be rise this fast, then so be it, right? It's the new way of doing business. Then stick with it if it's more efficient. And I guess naturally it will sort itself out. If your business doesn't need for people to show up, and you still ask people to show up in the post-COVID era, you won't have a sustainable business. People will go away. Why do I have to show up here, right? So I will. By the way, that is an old version of our website. I don't know who's posting that.
Yes. Yes, I just want to share the website of Pacific Crime Business Council as well as California Miramar University. Dr. Stan Foster's, I think Mr. Eric and Mr. Holmes, you can share about your services. How do you want to cope up
Actually,
with the?
Sharif, sorry, you're sharing actually, even though Pacific Rim Business Council is in charge of this Pacific Rim Chamber of Commerce. I
Understand?
think, yeah, this is a different place. In
Okay, okay.
reality, If you want to go to the website of Pacific Rim Business Council, Move, why don't you share the .NET one with Sharif? Or let
Okay,
Move
okay,
do it. If you don't mind,
okay.
now move
Yes,
to
yes, yes, yes.
I
Move,
just
why
did.
don't you do it.
Um,
By the way, now that we did
Mhm,
mention the Pacific Rim Chamber of Commerce, it is one of the operations that we are closely related to. While we're
mhm.
discussing this, we're also interacting with the expert
Mhm.
academy in the Mid East, stationed in
Okay.
Istanbul. We are also dealing with another entity called Dubai Synergic Hub, which is
Mhm,
in charge of the MENA region. So there are different places. This is the place you can go and find information concerning Pacific Rim Business Council, not Pacific Rim Chamber of Commerce, even though we are very much involved. By the way, we are the university, and as university, we interact with other entities such as Innovative Sustainable Living as
mhm,
another, I Value Professional Services. We are interacting with different entities that are in line with our sustainability agenda. But this is where you can go and look at Pacific Rim Business Council.
mhm, mhm. Yes, Mr. Eric, what do you want
yes.
to add about these services? Yeah.
Well, we're talking about how do you balance social distance and business opening. And the answer is that you do business opening, keeping in mind social distance the best you can. Obviously, the hardest hits are where you have to have customer interaction. Because when it comes to the workplace, you have a controlled environment where you can control how close people sit. In the workplace, the question is when you have to interact physically with customers, how do you do that? Well, some people don't act physically with customers
Mhm,
anymore. My wife had a doctor's appointment that normally she would have gone in for, and they did it by a video.
mhm,
So so the question is, what things you really need to look really hard and say, what things do you really have to have personal interaction for, and which
mhm,
points don't? For those things that you have to have personal interaction, how close does it need to be? The more personal, the better, but can you do it over video chat? In
mhm,
the service industry, uh, like food, that's really hard. But
mhm,
what they've done where I live is we've closed down our street on the weekends. So everything is moved out in the street with like the whole street. No cars
mhm,
go there. There's table and table and table, and everyone's far apart, and everyone's, who can wearing masks if they can. People are wearing gloves that are serving things. But that's a case where a whole community got together and said, let's expand our office space by moving it into other office space for limited times. Parking lots, yes, there's less parking. There's a
mhm,
restaurant, and they used to have two or three tables outside. Well, they just put a temporary,
mhm,
easy to set up fence to fence off that area. They moved their tables outside. So,
mhm,
it's not war. But the main reason we've had problems is because people haven't really had a great strategy. There's been one strategy like Sweden would and a lot of the US, which is, we'll just let it go. And other people said, oh, let's lock down everything. And the question always is, how do you evaluate risk
mhm,
and who needs more protected than others? Obviously, the big threat is that somebody at low risk of damage still has the same risk of contracting the virus who can give it to anybody who has a high risk of damage. So that's something that's very tough for business to control. So all you can control is what interactions do you need done with customers and how can you change those interactions? And that's more of a personal restructuring of the business And in some areas, businesses can work together like they did in my little town, where they said, well, we can't put everybody indoors this close together. So either they've, had to limit the number of tables, or they moved out. Well, some businesses in downtown San Diego, in those areas where it's not food, but they still need to meet with people, have created meeting areas, even interacting with things like a university, to say who's got a big space that we can collaboratively meet with people in ways. Distance is the big thing. So how do you get more distance when you actually need to physically talk to people? So hopefully that provides some insights to that question of how you balance that.
Well, like I was trying to say before, if you go around the world, in our world of small business, you realize it's close to 70% of the average person walking around on our planet works at a small business. They don't work at IBM. They don't work at GM. They don't work at Tencent. They work for, Joe's Restaurant, Larry's Tire Repair. They work in places like this. And these are all personal services, just as you were saying. This is person to person, and this is a human to human carried disease. It has affected small business much more than big business. And our job as being the business council and helping and connecting these small companies is to come up with some kinds of solutions that can address this particular issue, because as we go on, as we call it, the post-COVID era, this is going to be a pressing issue. I leave it up to the scholars like Dr. Ali and Dr. Foster and Mr. Moo and Mr. Eric to come up with these solutions. I basically started it, founded it, put it together, connected it, and now it's time to do something with it.
Thank you. Can I share this university, like California Miramar University, if Dr. Ali and you allow me?
I mean,
Yes.
if you want to, go ahead.
Yes. Yes, Dr. Stan Foster's and Dr. Ali, that what do you want to add about this California Miramar University? Because at COVID situation, most important thing is that from the developing nations, 28% youth community, they are drop out. So what the solution you have for the youth community, especially for the Asia Pacific? Yes.
Well, one of the things that we're trying to do is we've always had an element of our education that's online. So we found that we call it a hybrid solution, where the international students that would come to the United States and study here, those students have to go to class, because that's a scenario that's regulated by the Department of Homeland Security here for the United States. If they were going to study 100% online, of course, they would need to come physically to the United States. So that's the reason that has to happen. But because we were already very versed in online delivery, in part or in whole, all of our courses and all of our programs are 100%, they're accredited, but they're also 100% available online. So the pandemic wasn't as significant to our university as to many. There's a lot of schools that have never done anything but all 100% in class. And those schools have been massively impacted, because they had to go through this major learning curve of how do we deliver. They had to go into classes, implement systems that they'd never had before, and all of that just takes education and time. So the other thing, though, that we have realized, and Dr. Guyabadi has been with the university for a couple of years, and he came in. I had been with the university for a long time, and I immediately saw the wisdom of what he was saying, because it basically was saying that the world was going to be different in 5 years, so dramatically different, that if we as a university didn't start acting now, that we were going to, be way behind the times. Now, nobody knew that COVID was coming up less than 8 months later, 9 months later, and that particular happening would just expedite everything. And again, I do feel, I feel badly for the businesses, the small businesses that do depend upon face-to-face. They can't easily, migrate their business to a different type of a model. And what's more compounding to it, I know it is in the United States, and Holmes, maybe you can speak to this throughout the world, but in the United States, every state has the jurisdiction to quarantine people and issue quarantine factors. And more than that, every state is divided down into generally hundreds of counties, and those counties and local governments have a great deal to say about it as well. So one of the things that happens here in Southern California, San Diego specifically, is that these businesses that are kind of locked in and need to have those customers coming to them, even though they're in masks and social distanced, all of a sudden the parameter can change. Our governor from the state of California has changed it numerous times, where you can have people come in and eat at your restaurant as long as the tables are outside and they wear masks. Then they can then they've eased up, and that they can actually come in, but you can't have as many people in the restaurant as you used to. And then there's been times when it's gone and there's been a spike in cases, and all of that is shut down. So it's one of those things, and I think as a small business and a micro business, is probably the hardest roller coaster ride to this, is having to deal with that constantly shifting environment. And perhaps, we as the, Pacific Rim Business Council can help you in that, because what happens here is when the businesses get in trouble, they go to their Chamber of Commerce here. And they also go to their local and county representatives, and those representatives are going in and getting in the ear of the governor. And so, perhaps as the Pacific Rim Business Council, we can assist in that. But I don't know the ins and outs of that well enough to speak further on it.
Mhm. Yes, thank you. I want to take another question from audience. Mehbi Zannat. What will be the long-term effect on economy? Yes.
Okay.
And yes, I know that Pacific Rim Business Council, you have even collaborations with India and other countries as well. I think from that part, they want to know the economy of South Asia is improving progressively after the momentary lockdowns. Is the economic growth in South Asia positive or negative? So, yeah. I think as you have a strong collaborations with the different economic zones and countries, so yeah.
I think Dr. Guyabati will be able to address that probably the most eloquently of all of us, because he is a person who is a futurist and can see things and can see the vision of what's going to happen much clearer than the rest of us.
Yes.
I mean, let me also add this other question that was asked, and I guess we sort of went over it because someone asked about this. It was Abiaz Musta'in asked this hydrogen economy and thinking what's happening. Why did I bring this up? In reality, we see a lot of competing technologies as a global solution coming to forefront. Now, first off, for hydrogen economy, even today, the best estimates are 2031 onwards, we're going to get there. Yes, they're talking about forklifts today be able to do that, maybe from 2023, 2024 to 2026. There might have some sort of a early startup for some vehicles and maybe diversification after 2026. And again, everyone who's talking about this economy, they're looking into 2031, and it's pretty expensive and it's not mature at all. So I would not go there. But where I will go is IoT, Internet of Things, AI-based, data-based decision making, and assimilation of digital technology. You'll be amazed. And these are, I'm saying they're free today. if you just understand how to use it in your industry, in your business, and assimilate it appropriately, it's going to cut costs down beyond your imagination. And if you want to sort of worry about something, the new normal has made major players such as Alibaba or Amazon the way to go to market. In a way, you cannot directly go to market. You need to find a partner that is a superpower. No longer you need USA as a superpower. That era is gone. The new imperialism, if you want to call it that, is the imperialism of major market players such as Alibaba or Amazon. You need to understand that for you to be able to do what you want to do, you need to be part of a new paradigm, the new normal. Now, for Southeast Asia, all indications are that, okay, China obviously made it. It was obvious it's going to make it because they were not doing great anyways, the East Asian countries. So they haven't done worse than one would have expected. And it seems like their recovery is a bit faster. We have to wait until February to be able to better predict what will South Asia do. But all in all, it seems like the damage caused in South Asia is less, and their recovery is faster than anywhere else. Actually, Nigeria also is showing some signs of faster improvement amongst nations. So India, Nigeria, obviously at the forefront, China are doing pretty good. Now, other countries really, because they are part of a larger supply chain and they tend to be working, and because of the resilience already in place in their economies, or maybe the condition that has not gotten, not too many people have been first. The group that have been playing around with money, because what Mo says, and I totally agree, what is money? I don't think any of us has have a good definition. What is money? Money is a fictitious thing that we all have been enslaved to. In reality, money is nothing real. Okay, money is debt, and debt is the source of money. So uh, people who have gained the majority of the trickle down effect, positive effect, if you may call it, from COVID-19, stock market. A lot of money is nothing again, even though we give our lives for it, it's nothing. A lot of money has been created, and especially fiat money, which has nothing behind it, it's just money. Some people decide, and now you got it. It seems like the stock market has received majority of the benefit from this, and some businesses obviously have lost their livelihood due to the fact that they require interaction with people, close interaction and encounter. But all in all, Southeast Asia seems to be more resilient than other parts of the world uh, comparatively, and seems to have sort of bounced back. Some countries much faster than others. Again, I don't have data in front of me to be able to share with you, but I can tell you from industry point of view, the worst, you might be amazed, the worst hit by COVID-19 are universities. Universities are the worst hit. That's real data. Worst hit are universities. Next, restaurants and resorts and hotels and places that you require people to be there. These are the two. Now, some East Asian countries depended on the second. Most of them did not depend on the first. And it seems like because they were in part of a supply chain, and usually the lower part of the supply chain, they have been doing well and they still continue to do well. Hopefully, I have been able to quickly go through some of these issues. But on that, again, once back to the issue, if you're concerned about hydrogen economy, be more concerned about artificial intelligence, IoT, digitization of the organization, and even a digital corporation and your interaction with major keystone players in the new normal market.
Yes, Mr. Moon, what do you want to add about this hydrogen economy? Yes.
So hydrogen technology, it's in its essence, it's a energy storage solution, and that's not the only standard out there. And there are ways you can overdo it. Right? There are already lithium-ion battery that's being developed to the very state of art as it is. I don't think we can do much more development on lithium-ion. Graphene battery seems to be promising at this point, and hydrogen is lagging behind. A lot of them, and it's in some ways better than the batteries we have than the lithium ion right now. It charges faster, it offers more range, but the thing about it is you can't easily produce it at home. So you can have an electronic car, charging in your garage at night, but you can't have a hydrogen generator in your garage. And definitely not for the amount of volume you can generate overnight to actually power your commute. So that's why hydrogen is not taking off right now. That's a bottleneck for the technology in terms of utility. But it is a pretty ideal idea, a pretty good idea. If you think about it in the grand scheme of things, right? We have the tides going up and down without even us doing anything, right? If we can harvest that energy, and during our peak time, yes, we can use all of that energy, but at night or during a time we don't really need that much energy. You have all this energy surplus. How do you store it? Right now, we're not really storing it. Not in a sense that it actually make much of a difference. It's maybe 1/10 of 1,000, 100%. You are storing the energy, your surplus energy. Otherwise, you are just not harvesting it. So yeah, if you can have that much surplus energy and you put together a hydrogen factory, during downtime you just keep generating hydrogen, and during energy supply, that is a way to do it. But is the cost worth it? Is the cost of building that many hydrogen factories worth it to store that much energy? I guess from the fact that we don't already have a well-established hydrogen, because generating hydrogen is not new tech. It's traced back to centuries. We can generate hydrogen basically as soon as we discovered electricity. So at that time, due to the fact that we don't have that many hydrogen factories right now, that means, at least right now, so far, the cost of building those factories doesn't justify the cost of storing the energy. So maybe it will never will, but we don't know. So if you are really adventurous, yes, put your money in it. But otherwise, it's a very risky investment to put our money into hydrogen. But if you are young, aspiring academic, you are interested in the tech, you want to study it, by all means, because it involves physics, it involves chemistry, it involves how to make energy. Especially, it also involves economic. What better fields are to be in? That's a very good starting point for some people who want to geek out and just actually study this as a mind practice. But otherwise, economic-wise, that still has a long way to go.
Thank you.
There's something that is interesting about hydrogen. If you look at other places, there tends to be these centers and world leaders, like electric cars. Some areas, some countries are so far ahead of others. There's a huge disparity in other levels of technology on how good people are. Hydrogen is moving actually pretty steadily, but it's pretty balanced. Everybody's moving slowly, kind of. There's not really places that are dominating in the hydrogen, but Los Angeles County has hydrogen buses. The military actually has fuel capability where they can deploy it, drop it off, and make it in site. It's not my favorite technology, being an electric car driver, and the idea of putting a Tesla roof on and charging my car, in the future appeals to me a lot more than even having to. We don't even like to go to the gas station anymore. It seems a pain to have to stop and fuel anything. So having to stop at a hydrogen fueling station. By the way, there was one probably less than a mile from my old house. They had a gas station with a hydrogen capability right there. But right now, hydrogen is way more expensive than gas. And some hydrogen manufacturers actually are sponsoring the gas to lower the price of gas. But I agree with Moo, not my favorite technology. But what's interesting about it is everybody seems to be able to studying, and it is moving slowly, but everybody seems to everybody seems to be moving at the same rate in that technology, and every other technology people have jumped on and exploded in some areas and non-existent in others.
Yes, I think especially Japan doing a lot of work for this kind of things. Anyway, there are more questions from audience. Dr. Stan Foster, do you want to add something about this hydrogen economy?
Oh no, I really don't know much about that, to be honest.
Yes. The next question is that what are the process of testing economic efficiency for small and large business entities? And another things, I think I want to ask this question, Mr. Homestoner. Hello, sir. Is what situation can trade war lead some of the smaller nation economy to an economic crisis?
Well, one of the countries that I worked with a long time ago that had this issue was Fiji. I met with the Fiji president and the prime minister and all the rest of the government many, many times because they were concerned that they didn't have any resources that could help them build their country. And did I have any suggestions? Well, usually in a smaller country, smaller countries depend on bigger countries to supercharge their economies, and usually it starts with tourism. Unfortunately, at present time, that's not a viable model. But as we go along and things starting to loose up a little bit, it'll go back to the same old model, which is how are people going to know to invest in your country, to build business in your country, if they've never seen your country, never been in your country, don't even know what your country is, and have to rely on third parties to give you information about that country. So if you're going to do anything to build your country, whether you're Sri Lanka or whether you're Myanmar or if you're Vanuatu or wherever you are, if you want to build your country, it starts with tourism. Always starts with tourism. And then once you've got that relationship with the travel and tourism industry, then you can start enticing people to put money in the country because they know it, and then they've been there and they've enjoyed themselves and they've gotten good treatment. But it's the same old business model. You start with the tourism, you work into the investment, the FDI, foreign direct investment, and then you build from there. But if they don't know about it, they're not going to invest any money in you. And most smaller countries, in fact, most bigger countries, foreign direct investment for survival. It doesn't work from the inside out. It works from the outside in.
Yes, Dr. Stan Foster, do you want to add some
Well,
point?
not on that. I mean, one of the things I can speak to is, and it's back a couple of questions, is one of the things the university's done is put some energies into education 4.0, and that is taking the fourth industrial revolution, which Dr. Goodbody was talking about with the Internet of Things, and try to show and apply that to education. And what is education going to be looking like in the future, and also how are we going to be teaching and the people that are going to be in the workforce for this fourth industrial revolution? And I think that's an important piece as well. I totally agree with what Homestoner said, and about the aspect of bringing, if you're going to start and looking for direct foreign investment, it always starts with hospitality and the tourism industry. So again, I don't know how quickly that's going to come back, and what that's going to look like. And again, especially some of the times, even if the countries have a more open policy, it still may be very challenging for them to get outside tourists into the country, because what is the policy back home? And I had a good friend in Vietnam, and he traveled outside of Vietnam, not back to the United States. He's actually a Vietnamese American, and it took him 28 days. He was in one 14-day quarantine, and he went right from that into another 14-day quarantine. And so, it tends to, in these uncertain times, get people that would normally travel, even for business, to think twice. And so, but again, without that first level of tourism, I think it's very difficult and almost impossible to attract foreign investment for other things in any of the smaller countries.
Mhm. Thank you. There is actually more questions. I want to take two questions this time. Muhammad Shahinul Islam, thank you for your questions. How much importance of the correlation analysis between stock market valuations and the economic situations of business entities? And another question, Shahrukh Shumon's, hello sir, do big data technology support business management process? Yes, Dr. Ali Goabadi.
I mean, we were hoping that, I mean, at first it was like promised by the capitalistic regiments that, oh yeah, you want to know how well the economy is doing, look at the stock market. And in reality, Americans are all vested into stock market through their 401ks. And we were hoping that stock market valuation would be a great indicator of economic growth and well-being. But in reality, what I just showed is that that's absolutely not the case. Some managers, the way they know how to manipulate the market, are making a lot of money, and there is no particular real beef behind it. I mean, it's just happening just because they know how to play this so-called stock market valuation game. These are the big boys of the so-called capitalistic economy. And I would not put much into it. As I said, you don't believe me? Go look at the US stock market. Everything's great, 28,800 or something just right now, whereas people are doing very bad. Not just, a lot of businesses are doing very bad.
Back in the 1990s, late 1990s and early 2000s, I had an investment banking company for 3.5, almost 4 years. So I took 5 companies public to the over the counter, to the OTC market. So I have a lot of experience with building stock value, working with market managers and market making, and learning about the public markets, the IPOs, and I learned one big lesson. Just as Dr. Guliabadi just said, it has no reflection on business at all. Okay, especially in today's world, we have what we call day traders, and those are all based on electronic trading. In milliseconds, I can trade hundreds of thousands of shares of stock. Prior to that, it was brokers and dealers who to buy and sell the stock. Now it's all electronic and it's done in a heartbeat. So what you see are these fluctuations of the market have really nothing to do with reality. It has to do with buying and selling in milliseconds. How do I make money in 5 seconds or less? So that here is not a reflection of the day-to-day business, but a reflection on how I can buy and sell and trade stock to make money. There's a big difference here. And the other thing, which is when it comes to the public, is the public, they buy stock on emotion. They don't buy it on your EBITDA, or they don't buy it on their market caps, or they don't read thoroughly what they're buying. They buy it because everybody else is buying it. They sell it because everybody else is selling it. They sell it because the newspapers and magazines are telling them some horrible thing is going to happen or some incredible thing is going to happen, and they buy it with emotion. So you're basically dealing with a segment of the marketplace that's buying and selling stock on emotion, and then everybody else is buying it and selling it in milliseconds to make money. So there is no validity or nothing to base all of these theories on the market, because the market does not reflect the daily business of doing business.
And and that's it. You see, I mean, to be honest, I usually predict pretty well what the stock market is doing. Up to now, I have not put a penny into stock market. As a matter of fact, some of my students tell me, Professor, why don't you do it? Because you see the market so well. I say, because this money, I'm a Muslim, and as a Muslim, this money is haram. It's like it's a forbidden money. In reality, stock market to me is identical to what you make money when you go to the Las Vegas Strip, right? I mean, are you really making money by pulling a handle? No, you're not making money. You're betting. You're gambling. Stock market is nothing but gambling as far as I'm concerned. Now, that might be far left for some people's case, but guess what? I have nothing to do with them. Economic growth is a different issue. Yes, sometimes they come together, but 0.5% of Americans own more stock than 50% of Americans. That tells you something. And by the way, stock market has been ingrained into American life, meaning 401ks, right? I mean, they are forcing us into this mockery. However, when it comes to understanding what to do and how to measure economic activities, first of all, no longer US is the power, no longer. Thanks to Trump, I mean, he at least pulled US out of this international market and gave a lot of room for other players, especially China, to become a major player. That's why, if you notice, China did not congratulate Biden. Why? Because it was really to the detriment of US's global position, because China in the past 4 years has grown so much in the world that you cannot imagine. Don't look at the rhetoric of, South China Sea, whatever. That's nothing. What China has managed to do, putting over $3 trillion into other economies as a means of growth. So for small economies, there are other viable options. Yes, tourism, I think I totally agree with Mr. Stoner. However, right now, China with Belt Road Initiative that started 1993, they were foreseeing today. They are moving fast and furious throughout the world, especially in the Asia region, as well as into Africa, even into Europe. And they are putting money. I mean, I'm talking about over $3 trillion. Go look at the kind of roads they have created. And they're back to that Silk Road, and it's called the One Belt Road Initiative by China. And they are, so right now, a lot of small countries are choosing to join this bandwagon. That's not the only option. There are other options like ASEAN, and there are other treaties that people are joining, because in reality, markets are becoming very specialized. And it's not just economy of scale anymore, but it's economy of geography. Economy of geography says, what is this country good for in an overall supply chain? And because that is taking place, it's becoming more and more a game that actually a company, not a large company, such as Li and Fong, can determine the end result of Bangladesh. I mean, just a company. And I'm not talking about Amazon, $1 trillion company. I'm talking about $150 billion companies. Why? Because what they are doing, they are looking at how this global supply chain is working. Now, obviously, US's use of monetary power, namely sanctions against this country and that country, has been the biggest stumbling block for such a global supply chain to take shape, most likely countries like North Korea, Iran, and even to a certain extent, Russia will be changing their attitude. And I think some of the conflicts today that were major becoming less important, and maybe a global supply chain in which the totality of global well-being becomes an issue. It is possible, again, through a competition, not because suddenly China turned out to be this great nation. I never believed that. I mean, I live in USA and I believe in USA, by the way. I do not in China. However, what I'm saying is strategic directions. Today, it seems like, strategically speaking, China has become resilient by looking into their own population as a source of power rather than something they had to deal with. And they build from there, going outward in trying to create new markets, in trying to invest into their own markets. And their markets is beyond their 1.456 billion. And they're looking at the whole Asia continent as well as into Africa. Yes, they have competition from India and Nigeria, but then again, the situation is such that you have one choice and one choice: study, understand who you are, where you are, what market you are, which brings us to the last question that was asked: big data. Today, nothing happens without understanding what could happen. Is it going to happen for sure? No, we always have black swan. Black swan is something that is not probable but will take place. But no matter what, even within this whole context of pandemic, we saw people who were prepared, they lasted better. As Dr. Foster said, we started our strategy program 2 years ago, actually, to date, 2 years ago. And guess what? Pandemic had no negative effect whatsoever on our university because we were prepared to begin with. We started thinking about it a while back, and we were looking into major concepts of sustainability and resilience. You young people, you, the leaders of the future of Southeast and Pacific Rim, if you listen to what Mr. Stoner says, listen to yourself, go find yourself, redefine yourself, understand digital technology, and know how the new market. Do not be fascinated with the glaring effects of the past. The new normal is really more Asian centric than it is American.
Thank you, Professor. So, Mr. Eric Mo and Dr. Stan Foster, what do you want to add on that particular issue? Actually, there is a huge audience response, lot of questions. I know that when the Pacific Crime Business Councils and Dr. Ali and everybody joins, actually, people come up with a lot of questions. I am sure that they are getting a lot of help from your answer. They are actually getting real life
Just
solution.
one point, because people have this Industry 4.0, go to our website, to calmu.edu, California Miramar University. Go to calmu.edu. You will find some short videos there. You will find some DBA level videos there. You're going to like what we are sharing with people. We are sharing some new ideas that are futuristic. Sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
Yes.
Sorry.
So I loved big data since I had got access to one of the first Cray YMP supercomputers in existence, and I remember some people using it to figure out there's a correlation between diapers and beer sales in stores where they I guess the reasoning was that dads, when they got sent out to get the diapers, always went to convenience stores and said, when I'm there, I think I'll get the beer. And so what they did is they put the diapers and beer together with sale signs. So I said, wow, who would have thought that? And then adding the power of geographic information systems to look at space and time in there. Huge fan of big data. However, in working with lots of companies with big data, all data is a tool or fuel to make decisions. So to make decisions, the more important thing is, did you get the right questions? Big data is getting either, especially in the genealogy spaces. Big data is getting easier because you can do it. And it's not so much, we've had the ability to store data efficiently, except for video, and that's come a long way. We've had the ability to store data efficiently. The key is, how do you sort through that data to get answers? And that's been the problem, is defining the questions. Because a lot of people said, "Oh, give me a report on this. Give me a report." Well, why do you need that? Well, because someone sold me this thing, and I can punch a button and get these numbers. It's like, but what's it for? What the question? So the far more important thing, and a lot of business, again, it goes back to the idea is, do you have a well executed strategy? To have the strategy, what decisions do you need to make? What questions do you need answers? What data do you need to answer those questions so you can execute a strategy? And the biggest problem is people get data and it's disconnected from any kind of strategy. They don't know why they're getting it. They look at it. They also add the wrong context to data. That way, big data can be crap. You can have a lot of really bad data and pull answers and assume the wrong meaning from it. But so you have to be really, really on point to what question you're asking, what do you need, what data is it available, and then even is that statistically accurate. So big data can actually give you a lot of really bad answers. I've seen it used and misinterpreted over and over. Moo?
I do have some things to say about big data. It is kind of my day job working with big data, and I'm a marketing analyst, so I know both marketing and the data side. I'm gonna just make a statement right here, assertion right here. Big data is a marketing term. For a statistician, it doesn't mean anything. So the very definition of big data is the data set that is too big for any traditional data software to handle. Right? So by definition, big data doesn't exist as soon as you are able to study it. Right? If you can study a data set, then by definition, it's no longer big data. It's just data. And then you go into your normal data analysis. Right? So what is barely count as big data, from my point of view, is the data set that is so big, it can only be analyzed by AI. That's where the buzz term comes in. I know, Eric, you mentioned the big data in the 80s. What's the machine you said? YCM, right? Is that?
Cray YMP.
Yeah, YMP, yes. That machine, that machine, can be basically virtualized in my game PC now. in my home computer now.
We did. We went to parallel computing later on, but at that point, that's all we had. And like Moo said, what you got was you got more data than you had to do it. So then we had to spend years building up the infrastructure and the tools just to be able to look at the data.
And once you got there, it's no longer big data. It's
more
just data.
sensors. Yeah, with the Internet of Things. Now you have more sensors. So when we started going from regular files to IoT, regular files are like throwing boulders, especially videos. Like, here, have a big file. It's kind of like the PowerPoints that Dr. Guyabati sends me. That used to fit a whole computer before. But all of a sudden, when I by the way, I helped start an Internet of Things company that's now over a decade old, and it's still going strong. And all of a sudden, we didn't have these big boulders. We had little data, but lots of it. It was like a sandstorm. So all of a sudden we were hit by this sandstorm of all this data because it was like on, off, temperature, humidity, and we were getting hit by it. So we had developed new cloud computing methodologies just to make sense of that data. And when we first got, same thing, there was more data than we could deal with. Then we started getting tools to handle that data. Then just as Moo said, what happened? Oh, new sensors, new devices, new method. Oh, more data. So it just represents the fact that you're always trying to get answers to questions, and the technology keeps moving up our ability to get answers. But it happens.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes, I want to take more questions. Okay. So, Mohammed Shumon, his question, what is the impact of health crisis on economic stability? And sorry, there is another question. Should sustainable and pro-ecological economic development be an important determinant of shaping economic policy after COVID-19? Dr. Ali.
All right. But just one thing on that. I used to work with Cray2C.
Okay.
When I was working for NASA and working on a NASA project, I worked with Cray2C. There is a difference, Mo. These actually supercomputers have an operating system that is inherently different, and hence no amount of uh, computers together. I don't care what kind of cloud you look at the top 10 new computers that are out there, from Summit to whatever is to China. Cray2C and this level of computation is beyond our imagination now. They can simulate a missile flying over the whole globe at the 10-meter height and do it in such a fashion you'd be amazed. It's because of the structure of the FPAs and others. Now, we're not going to get there. Let's go back to what, yes, health crisis definitely is going to affect. I mean, that's the reality. But the question is how severe of a health crisis? Yes, a health crisis that kills you like COVID-19, sure. But obesity, heart attack, no. I mean, it's been there. I mean, it was there. I don't want to sound like Trump, but I do sound like Trump. It's like it's not that big of a deal when you look at the numbers. The reality is the severity that this person is gonna die soon. The other is gonna die a bit later. First, the health crisis. Again, I'm going to talk like Mo. And in reality, depends on how you turn it. How you look at it. Yes, something like pandemic, which has an R factor that can easily go to double digits, yes, it does have an effect. But that effect could be mitigated because at the end of the day, economy is an aspect, our social aspect on how we interact. Some of them are necessities, some of them are not. Anything that is not necessity of life will be affected negatively unless you can find a way to turn it into a necessity for your audience. That's issue one. Issue two, I think the world is becoming more stable considering there are major players that are non-political. Before it was only, a country, UK, Britain, the Great Britain would have made a decision. Today, Google has almost the same power, if not more, than what Great Britain did with less destructive power. And are we going to go towards a way of being able to have a sustainable economy in view of what's happening? I think we are there. I'm very positive on the effect of this COVID-19 was not the cause, but COVID-19 brought the situation in which resilient, sustainable organizations that were future oriented to shine better. And for those who should have taken a while to die faster. I don't mean to be harsh. All I'm telling you is find something comes in and reduces the cost of keeping people alive in hospitals. Fine, that's the reality of life. I'm not celebrating that. That could be somebody's father, mother, someone with diabetes. But in reality, when the real test comes, only the resilient ones will last. That's a factual aspect of data analysis, not a human being talking about, because one life could be my dear one, my loved one, and we love everyone. However, the reality of life is death is the most important aspect of life. Death is life. We cannot ignore it, and that death does not necessarily mean the death of individuals, but the death of companies, the death of organizations, and the death of empires. So nothing to worry about. What we need to understand today is we need to go back and re-examine the basics. Without a good understanding of human nature, without a good understanding of the new economy, and without understanding the role, place of digital existence in any format, it'll be very difficult and we find ourselves at loss. Educate yourself, interact with one another, and try to stay on top of it. And to be honest, worrying and being afraid has no particular result that I can consider it to be worth your while. Try not to be afraid, try not to be worried. Just try to educate yourself and do your best and stay resilient. Thank you.
Thank you.
But
Mr.
gentlemen,
Homesteader.
I have to leave now. I have a transaction I have to complete, so I'll take my leave and I'll let you guys finish your conversation. It's been very nice seeing you, and I'll see you again very soon.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Mo. I want to take a special question for Mr. Mo. And yes, do you tell us how should a guaranteed income system be built as part of a pro-development socio-economic policy?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, it's for Mr. Mo. Yes.
Doc might be more
You
qualified
get
to
all
talk
the
about
simple
this.
ones, Mo, darn it.
I love that. Let's hear it. Yeah.
Well, universal basic income. That's another way to put it, right? So you're talking about the idea of giving everybody some cash so they can get by, and for the rest of money they need to either earn through doing excellent work, above average work, or they should explore being placed where nobody ever been before, right? That's basically describing the concept of Star Trek. Funny Star Trek fans here. So if that would be a true system, there has to be a lot of caveats. So first of all, you can't use the money for drugs. Right? That's the biggest concern and the biggest argument of the naysayers. And I totally agree with that. How do you spend your basic income? That's a very fundamental question. Do you spend it on housing? And if the housing, you are allowed to spend your basic income on your house rental, then should the government get into regulating the price of housing, the price of houses, or the price of rent? Do we rent control everything? And that's ties into way too much power to be really balancing out what it takes. More than a person, takes more than a couple of person, takes a whole team to actually come up with a comprehensive solution. And as the old saying goes, man plans, God laugh, right? So even when you have a comprehensive plan, how do you spend the money? You still would have some people to, whenever there's an innovation, I'll put it this way, whenever there's an innovation, there will be 10 fraud associated with that innovation. So people will try to find loopholes. People will try to cheat the system. Doesn't matter what the system is. All that being said, all that negativity being said, I'm still a firm believer on universal base income because I'm in my age group. I'm still representing not representing my age group, but at least I'm in the same boat with a lot of young people who is even struggling paying rent. I'll be honest here. Be perfectly kind. If I go back to China, yes, I have a set life, but fighting America to try to get myself a nice livelihood out of my own effort, that actually is a very rigged game against young people. And no offense to the more experienced people in this group. So when you have to out of college, when you have to pay 1/3 of your salary into your housing, and by you can probably live off another 1/3 on just food and rent, not rent, food and other necessities of life. You don't have much to save, and that's on top of paying your student loan. So the system right now is not working, right? So is it right for a human to have shelter? Is it a right for a human to have basic communication? Is it a right for a human to survive? If that's a right, then have your economic system reflect it. Right now, it doesn't do that. right? If a person got out of college and if he doesn't do anything, he die. He starve. He would die to exposure if he live in a colder climate during winter, right? So people can get overheated, and if they live in the desert, they will die. They have no house, right? So if we want to, make a world where everybody actually lives just because he's a person, then universal basic income is the only alt. It's the only alt we get. It's the only step we can take at this point. I'm not saying that's the final step. I'm saying that's a good step towards a right world, a world where human actually matters. Stop talking about human right when you can't even guarantee your own country's people's livelihood. And by livelihood, I don't mean a good life. I mean being alive, right? People are dying on the street in America here. And America is supposed to be the best country in the world by what standard? Right? So yeah, that's my conclusion. I don't think I can talk with anything else.
Sharif, why don't we make that our next talk? UBI should be our next talk. Universal
Basic income.
We can bring to an end.
Yes, exactly. In the next week, we can discuss on the UBI, Universal Basic Income. But I think Mr. Mu has a lot of challenges. And what do you want to add, Dr. Stan and Mr. Eric? How you want to support Mr. Mu? My friend has a lot of problem in US actually. Yes.
You don't have to support me.
Yeah, just when you think of UBI, you think of what Henry Ford tried to do. Say, if I don't pay people more money, they can't afford to buy my cars. So that's what he wanted. He wanted a bigger consumer base, and that's one of the main arguments. And UBI is let's pay Mu enough money so he can consume. I don't know that Mu would run out and start consuming like he's supposed to with that money. People argue that it'll cost too much and you won't get the return on investment from that money. That's not what we've seen in the past, but maybe people also argue, will that motivate people? And there's always this idea that whenever you help people, that the system is just abused and people are lazy. They use that a lot for welfare. But I think if you look at the statistics of the amount of abuse, they always hit those stories and there always is abuse. But you have to weigh is the amount of misuse. One is with big data, can we track and stop that misuse? But is the amount of misuse, does that balance the amount of help? Because there's a lot of people who were helped and never got on it again. Like one of my friends, I've asked her why she was so supportive of homeless in terms of giving them a house, and she said, well, do you ever see that crazy person on the street that you knew was out of their mind? And I said, yeah. She goes, that was me. Somebody helped me. I got a house now, suit, own business owner, went off it. So do things like that help? That's a big question, though. People just either focus on the help, the benefit, or they focus on the potential misuse, and they realize, well, no, it's kind of, you get both. You get both. So is the benefit better than the misuse? And two, can you cut down this misuse? Can you put things in place that say, no, you don't get to misuse it. That's not what it's for. So can we police that? That's a thing. Also, people argue about this idea of, well, why should I give, Donald Trump Jr. money? Isn't he already getting money? How come everybody gets the same? That's not fair. Should we, the question is, how do you get that sense of fairness? Because most when people talk about ethics or morality, what people are really saying is, I want to feel like it's fair in some way. And that's a challenge. And then, of course, there's just people say that it's just wrong. It's just wrong to give people money. I think it's more important to focus on what you're trying to do. And who cares about the rest? Will this create a middle class and make us all more money? Then okay, I'm for it. If it doesn't, then no. If it costs me, then no, I'm not. But yeah, there's all that idea of what economy does that give? For example, I know the military pays people a housing allowance, and then it has a variable allowance. Guess what military people get charged for housing? Their housing allowance. You look it up and go, okay, this is what your rent is, because I know that's what you're getting. So that's the same thing. Oh, here's what your UBI is. Okay, this is now the cost. So that's the other question, is if you're dividing a system of that, is how do you control the cost? So those are my thoughts on what Boo said about UBI.
But
Yes.
there's a lot of studies that show that that job performance in employees and just self-worth is based upon how productive they are, how much they're doing, how good they feel about themselves. And I think the biggest challenge with the universal payment is that it's just like some people, the argument that if you get it for free, what is it worth? If there's no investment in that money whatsoever, then you're all over the place, just like what we're talking about. So perhaps, I've never thought about this in depth, but there's so many different worthy causes out there. Let's tie, if you're going to get a universal amount, let's tie that to giving back something, right? That doesn't preclude you from uber achievers from having a job, still doing exactly what they want, get the additional money, but let's have a certain amount of modicum, duty to earn that, okay? And it can be something you love to do. If you love children and you got, and you can help them in the park situation, or there's so many different things out there that you could do of your choosing for the most part. And it's, I say that only because the United States military is notorious for this. They when people join the military or they're drafted, not so much drafted anymore, they never get to do what they want to do. Right? They're stuck in some other job, and very few, if you enlist, you say, well, I want to go in and be a computer programmer working on this. You're enlisted into the military with that promise, but 9 times out of 10, that promise doesn't materialize. They put you exactly where they need you. So I wouldn't want to do that model, is what I'm saying. Because then everybody feels like they've been cheated. But I do think there's so much need out there. And again, I think you need to hone this down to that this money wouldn't be enough to pay everything. I think you need to still incentivize, but it'd be enough that if you were that street person you were talking about, Eric, okay, you'd have enough to be able to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and get out of that. And so again, it's a delicate balance in my opinion.
So there's a thing to think about in there, and that's like the Costco. Costco used to spend a lot of money figuring out what to charge people. They had a whole team of people just to set pricing, and they figured out it was cheaper just to get rid of all those people and charge a set amount. Buy it for the best price you can and do that. So is the cost of maintaining that system, is Stan really out there doing his weekly service to disadvantaged, whatever, is the cost of managing all that worth, or you just say, here you go, nobody can complain about the basics. If you complain at this level, go do something about it. Yeah, you don't like your house, good, go to work, get a better house.
I got a solution for that. The biochip we implant in you, that we can track you.
Internet of Things, right?
But that's a big data problem, Stan. Think of all the data from all those biochips.
You see, Teddy, that's what happens to you when you go overtime. So now we're in need of a drink. So we're going to have fun. You guys can enjoy your night.
Okay, thank you. This is actually really nice, this discussions. Especially, I am sure our audience really enjoy your sessions. And I want to ensure one point, like World Talent Economy Forum from the beginning, we are very much depend on organic things. Yes, still we are growing, but who joins, whatever it is, we completely depend on the organic audience and everything. So definitely in the future, we're going to discuss on universal basic incomes and what's the concluding remarks for today. I want to start with Mr. Mu, then Dr. Stan, Mr. Eric, and Dr. Ali.
I look forward for our next section talking about Universal basic income. It's gonna, as you can see, we already have a little preview on that. It's gonna be very fascinating, and we
Thank
have
you.
people from different perspectives in the chat.
I
Thank you.
think the session was very productive. Thank you for hosting it, and we covered a lot of ground today. And
Thank
but
you.
you know, there's one of the things. I mean, the phrase I heard, you know, the most common today was "whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger," and that's about a
Yes.
Nietzsche quote. And I do think that that's an encouraging word for these times.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Eric.
Well, next time I'm just going to listen to Moo the whole time. I'm interested in that. So I'll probably just sit here and hear what Moo has to say about the universal basic income. That's pretty interesting. You know, one thing to think about, I think, you know, kind of summing up is this idea we've talked about strategy and intent. It's not just about action. It's what outcomes and intents do we want to get that? And then how do we build that with technology is a big one. You got to take advantage of that, but also picking businesses that themselves are sustainable and resilient from design, and then building out the people and resources to be able to accomplish with that design. And the other thing is to think about all this stuff impacts each other. So we talked, you know, about health and COVID. So here's this physical health risk, which causes impacts, which causes economic strain, which causes emotional stress, which causes health impacts. So
Yeah.
the problem is anytime we mess with something, something else happens to make it even more difficult.
Yeah, amen.
So that's why you have to have an attitude of let's get the information, let's know ourselves, let's know the world and the market, let's make a plan, a strategy, let's implement it, but let's not pretend it's going to work. That's the startup mentality that Dr. Guyabati talked about, is you're always saying, you know, in the startup world, we say pivot or persevere, constantly test something. If it works, persevere. If it doesn't, pivot, let's do something else. And that's the mindset that's very hard in big business, but they can do. It's this idea of this constant change of the world change, and that's where you get a lot of that resilience from. It's setting up a structure which is able to constantly understand and you know, project, analyze, and adjust. And that's what businesses have a lot of challenge with. So I think that's the most important thing when you talk about, and of course the workforce is your key.
Yes, our philosopher, our professors, and you get a feedback. Muhammad Shoaib Rana, hopefully we can make a better plan for our business with this discussion. Yes, Dr. Ali Goyabadi. Yes.
Right, very good. I mean, anyways, we had fun, but don't forget, each and every one of you can be that instigator of major change in the world. Don't think because we got 7 billion people or more living on Earth, you got 7 billion people who are capable of change. Usually it takes one person, right? One individual writes something. It's independent of your age, your economic condition, your nationality, your gender, your religion. You could be that change as long as you know what you're talking about. The problem is we use a lot of buzzwords, you know, strategy, sustainability, resilience. I think you need to go and understand what that means, not just in academic terms, but also what does it mean to you, to your environment. I'm sure next time we're going to have fun, as Mo said about universal basic income. If you want to attend this meeting, make sure you read on it because it's better. If you want to, I suggest to watch a movie called Interrelationship. Interrelationship is free, available on YouTube. And if you get a chance, read a book called Walden 2. Walden 2, an interrelationship. And if you really are into it and you got a lot of time on your hand, read The Sane Society by Eric Fromm. Guess what? The only way for us to go forward is at least to know what people have already told us. Because if you don't know what they have told us, we will not come to an understanding that can turn us into a leader in our community. And keep in mind there are solutions out there, but we need to agree to respect each other when we disagree. And it is only through this sort of get-togethers. That's why I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my dear friend, Dr. Sharif, for again his uh, above and beyond the role in his humanity and having this beautiful smile and making sure that we're here on time. So thank you all for staying up late, and I wish you the very best from the beautiful San Diego.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So next time we're going to discuss on universal basic income. So everybody listen, my friends, Mr. Mo. Thank you, thank you. Take care, thank you.
Bye bye.
Yes, bye bye, bye bye. Yes.